Welcome to the College Admission TV podcast. Join us for insights from education leaders on today's academic landscape. We are excited to have as our guest Dr. Barbara McMillan, president of Blue Mountain Christian University in Blue Mountain, Mississippi.
Dr. McMillan, I always do like to start with your personal journey too. And so I'd love to learn, who are the mentors that helped shape your path to the presidency?
Well, there are several of those. I won't go too far back in my educational journey, but I'll go back to the president that I served under at Union University. I was there for 20 years, and David Dockery was president for the large portion of the time that I was there. And he is a mentor to many who served under his leadership. And so I always think of the fact that how blessed I am to have served under someone who now I think we get very little argument that he is the senior statesman in Christian higher education. And I claim him as someone who has influenced my career to a great extent. Serving with him and under him and answering was our provost, Carla Sanderson, who is a dear friend of mine, and she is an excellent example of someone who has extraordinary leadership skills, particularly leadership in times of crisis. And I say that because she was our provost when the tornado hit Union University and destroyed a large portion of the campus. And her skills as a nurse came into play. She was an emergency room nurse. That was her training before she went on to get her terminal degrees. And so we saw it all kick in, that there's somebody who knew how to step up to the plate when an emergency strikes. So I think about the calmness of Carla Sanderson in an emergency and learned a great deal from her. So those are two people that I think very highly of in terms of the vision for particularly Christian higher education, and being able to articulate that vision in ways that people can understand and be encouraged by, and Carla for her leadership skills in particular. Those two folks mean a lot in my life.
Mm-hmm. So what does it mean to come back to a place that was about 15 miles north of your hometown, Faulkner?
It was not something I ever anticipated. So strange, I guess, would be the answer to the question. That I didn't see that coming. God had a plan that was much different than the one I thought would unfold. But it was exciting to come back, to really come home in a lot of ways, to know the area, to know the people, to feel like I was already part of a family. That's probably pretty rare for a president to step into a role not being an alumna of the institution. And I could see where it would feel that way if I were a graduate of Blue Mountain Christian University. But I feel a kinship with this community because of my upbringing and my family that surrounds me close by. So it's pretty special.
Mm-hmm. So being a journalism major and doing a lot of work in media relations, I know it's not apples to apples, but you obviously were an English major. You got several degrees around English. So when did you know you loved English? And was it loving to write, read, all the above? When was that moment you really realized, hey, you know what, I really love this?
That is a great question and such a timely one. Just recently, some folks that had played a special role in my past, I was thinking of them. My pastor, when I was growing up, passed away a couple of weeks ago, and I was able to visit with his family, and his wife was my high school English teacher. And so I was thinking about this very thing that you have asked about, and that is, how did I know? And I almost remember to the day when I knew this is what I wanted to do. And that was a situation when we were doing grammar. It was a grammar class, and everybody else just really hated it. And I loved it. And I remember she was explaining something, and other people in the room were like, I don't get it. And I thought it was like a light bulb went off. And I got what she was talking about. And she was talking about verb tenses and present and past participles and things like that. And I remember going, look at this. Oh, this is what I want to study more. And so it was that moment. I didn't follow that path perfectly. I started out as a business education major. I don't know what I was thinking at that time. It did not take me long to realize I was not on the right path there, and that I needed to be back in a setting where working with words was far more appealing to me than working with business crunching numbers at that time. Little did I know I'd be doing a lot of that later on.
Now, are you still able to teach in your current position?
I had not taught since coming to Blue Mountain, and I miss it. I feel in my heart that is truly what I'm called and equipped to do, is to teach. And so it causes one to question, well, why are you doing what you're doing instead of teaching? And a long time ago, probably 20 years ago now, when the opportunity to serve as an administrator first came along, I knew that it was right because I wanted to be in a position where I could help faculty. I wanted to be in a role where I understood what it is like. I do understand what it is like to be in a classroom and what it takes to be effective in promoting learning, particularly in a Christ-centered environment. And that is very, very valuable to me, and I'm very passionate about it. So when the opportunity to help others develop their passion opened itself up to me, I felt it was right to step into that role. And I still claim that today is the reason I do what I do, is because I love what happens in the classroom. And I want it to be spectacular for our students.
So what was that feeling that you had when you got the call to become the president at Blue Mountain Christian?
Disbelief at first. No. I went for the interview and did not. I've told this story many times. Our board chair loves telling this story too. Went for the interview. It was on Saturday. After a long period goes by of the search process, and had a great experience. Just really felt like I was able to make some friends with some folks at that table. It was a really interesting and fun and energizing time, but did not expect that they were going to actually call someone that day. And so I get a call that afternoon, and the board chair says, we'd like for you to accept our invitation. And I was speechless, stunned, because was not anticipating that coming so quickly. There was much conversation that transpired after that point, but it was very clear not too long afterwards that this was in fact something that a door was being opened for me to step into, and that all the parts of my career that I could look back on, God had used to bring together for such a time as this. And it felt very right, something I was very humbled by, and something I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity to do.
Well, and now Blue Mountain has been around since 1873.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm actually reading a book that I think the name's appropriate here. I'm reading a book called Resilient by John Eldredge. And, I don't have to tell you, the enrollment cliff, the saturated marketplace, there's a lot of challenges, especially for, smaller rural faith-based institutions. But I use the word resilience because whether it be COVID, whether it be wars, and I can go down the list, for an institution to have started in 1873 and still be able to be sustainable, how do you do that?
That is a great question. I think resilience is fed by a commitment to one's mission. And when you have a calling to do a particular thing, then whatever comes your way, whatever circumstances, be it COVID or dwindling markets, whatever the challenges is, there is a resolve to pursue the mission that is yours in spite of those circumstances. In our case, it's a faith-based mission. We feel that we are here 150 years later because God has provided. He has commissioned our work. We believe as educators focused on a Christian worldview, and rather than saying somewhere along the line that mission doesn't matter that much anymore, we've determined that our mission matters more than it ever has. And instead of softening it or quietly stepping another direction, we've determined to run toward it with all that we have in us. And I believe that's where that resilience is knowing what it is you're supposed to be doing and sticking to it. We talk around here, our mascot is a topper. It's a type of mountain goat, and we talk about topper tenacity. And that really is evident here by the grace of our great God and his blessings on us.
Well, let's talk a little bit about relationships. Relationships is such a general word, but means so much. Can you talk about the local relationships in the local community and what it means to Blue Mountain Christian and vice versa?
Well, as someone who grew up not far from this community and whose family came from literally right around the college, I have a special sense of that community. You know, we're in a very small town, so we know each other pretty well. We want to be of service to our community. They are our neighbors, they're our friends, they're our relatives. We want them to thrive as we thrive. And we want to be here, and when they have needs to support them. And I think we have a strong relationship with our community. We are very rural, and so that poses some different challenges. Every institution has challenges that are associated with their geographic setting. And that's certainly true for a rural institution. It means that we need to be mindful that we have plenty of things lined up for students to be engaged in, to feel that they have a life that is vibrant and thriving as part of a campus community. But they have to travel a ways to be parts of things that go on in larger settings. So that's one of the challenges, but it's also one of the blessings. I read recently, I was reading about something in the history of Blue Mountain Christian University, that in some of the early advertisements, like around 1873, right at the beginning, you know, one of the things that they were pitching, which they were right to do, is that there are few distractions here in this community, so that students can stay focused on their studies. And so that remains true 150 years later.
So now, do you do campus tours?
Oh, we do campus tours. Are you asking me if I do the tour?
Well, the reason I'm asking is, and if you're visiting with families, which I'm sure you do, what question is most common from parents?
Oh,
let's say for those incoming prospective students and families.
Certainly, students and their parents want to know, how do we afford? What makes it possible for us to afford private higher education? which can be challenging. And we have numerous financial packages and scholarships that help students address that challenge. Parents are concerned about the welfare, as they should be, of their student. They're interested in safety and security. That's one of the things that I think that in addition to being able to focus in Blue Mountain, Mississippi, that they're in a place where we feel safe, we feel secure, we feel like family. And that is something that when we share that with parents and students, that I know it means a lot. And I know that if you talk to graduates, that's one of the things that they will say is, I truly did meet the best friends I've ever had at Blue Mountain Christian University. I felt like I was part of a family.
Well, and news came out this morning around, the U.S. government forgiving an additional $9 billion in student debt. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask you was, how do you make sure that Blue Mountain Christian students don't fall into debt or can pay off their debt?
I think it's a matter of education from the get-go, of helping students understand, first of all, what their options are and what those long-term obligations may mean for them. That, I think, is something that, I was a first-generation college student. I remember what it felt like. I didn't understand how this system works. A lot of students don't, and they need someone to guide them, to walk them through what it means. Here are your options for paying for your education, giving them good counsel about the amount of debt that they are taking on versus the kind of income they can expect to earn, and just being realistic about that. We hear so much every day, it seems, about the lack of trust that our nation in general has in higher ed anymore. I think that's one of the issues, is that people have to understand what the value is, and is this what makes this investment worth what we're going to sign on for. And we have to be fair and honest and kind and encouraging as we communicate with students and their parents about what that investment is going to yield.
Well, and I think, when I hear the words diversity and inclusion, I oftentimes hear from presidents and senior administrators that without belonging, that doesn't really matter, or doesn't matter as much. And so can you talk a little bit about, how do you make sure that you're creating an environment of belonging for students and staff, and for both, for students to persist and complete their work, and then staff to stay on board and stay with their job and advance?
I think the best way to answer that is with simply examples of what happens on a daily basis. We want every student to thrive, every student, and we work really hard to provide students with access to the support needed so that they can be successful. So we're not just going to say we want you to feel like you belong. We want to demonstrate that you belong through caring and compassion and interest, and knowing people's names and caring about where they're from and what their hopes and dreams and aspirations are. I think that says more about being a family and belonging than some maybe initiative or program that's designed to make that happen. It's just what you do every day. It's what we go about daily. I think about our Teaching and Learning Center, the director of that center, and how well she knows every student who walks in that door. She knows if they've got a test tomorrow or next week. She knows when their papers are due. She knows if they're struggling in a particular area, and she's going to design something to help them be successful. She just cares about what happens to those students. And if I'm in that student's shoes, I'm going to feel like I belong because of the way that Dr. Teague has treated me.
So Blue Mountain Christian has roughly 950 students total. Is that fair to say?
Well, that includes a large population of dually enrolled students. So on the
Okay.
ground, we have around 560, 565, something like that. We've had a high enrollment in recent years of 650, 660. So somewhere between those two numbers is sort of where we typically land. We'd like to be, our long-range plans hopefully get us back to 600 in the fall of 24. And then beyond that, we're probably looking at 700 to 800 students as being a good fit for us so that we can maintain that small atmosphere, that the comfortable atmosphere where we feel like we can know our students well.
So can you talk a little bit about the importance of lifelong learning? Because I just think oftentimes, and you can speak to this a lot better than I can, but I think it's a natural inclination, and I'll just, I guess, reference myself, my own experience. When you're going through high school, you're not exactly sure, especially early on, what do you want to major in? I think half the time you're not even sure what a word around a major really, what does that mean? So how do you make sure that students and families, and in particular students, understand, hey, let's make sure we're looking, at ourselves as lifelong learners as opposed to maybe chasing a paycheck, if that makes sense.
Well, that's at the heart of a liberal arts education is, really what you're teaching students through that type of program is the value of lifelong learning. We learn what we need to succeed today, but we also need to learn what we're going to need to succeed next year and 5 years and 10 years and 25 years down the road. And that's about learning skills. That's about developing a habit of learning that maybe happens here, maybe it happens we hope it happens during your college experience, that you've developed the habit of learning, so that you can rely on that habit when you need to learn new things as you enter perhaps into new phases of your career, different jobs, different levels of your work. We can all look back on our own personal examples and know that the things I learned as an English major served me well then and shortly thereafter, but they combined with other things and other experiences as time passed by. And it was being aware that you have to keep learning in order to stay current, stay relevant, stay prepared.
So now, is there any pet peeve that you have being an English major when you see an email come across your desk or an essay or an article in a newspaper? Is there any pet peeve that you look at and go, they're missing a punctuation point? Or there?
Yeah. Every day. I don't carry my red pen around with me anymore, though, so I don't, mark things up. Some would disagree with me on that maybe I still do. I don't know that I could pick out one thing, though. I will say that I think the world, the texting community has really done a number on our skills as grammarians, and those of us who fall in that camp have probably had to, take a deep breath and go, okay, that really bothers me, but we may have lost that battle. But that makes it all the more important, I guess, that somebody has to still know what those rules are and when and how to apply them. So maybe it makes the work of the English major even more relevant.
How are you engaging alumni?
We have a wonderful alumni director who knows our alums very, very well and stays in contact with them. But I would say probably most of our engagement comes through our planning of events that are designed to bring alumni back to campus. They love to come to campus. It is wonderful to watch those graduates return. One of our events is called Reunion Weekend. It used to be called Homecoming on the Hill. reunion weekend, we celebrate the 50-year anniversary class. And that's one of my favorite events of the years, to watch those folks come back and just soak up the atmosphere of what was Blue Mountain College at the time and what it means for them to be back on campus and to be so excited to be here. So we have lots of interaction with our alums. We stay in touch through weekly prayer emails that go out, prayer requests for our community. So I think that probably the interaction that we enjoy the most, though, is that face-to-face time we get to have when they're here for that weekend. And then we also have homecoming weekend. So we have two special, what might be called, both of them have homecoming flair to them, one in the summer and one coming up the first weekend in November, which will be our big Founders Day celebration for our 150th anniversary.
Do you remember the experiences that you had watching a football game at Ole Miss?
Do I remember? Oh, yes. That was just recently. Yeah.
Spent a lot of time at the Grove?
Not that much. I was a graduate student, so I was always, in my cubby in the library, so I didn't get into the Grove too much. But my husband is a great football fan, his family, so a lot of tradition there about being a part of the Rebel family as well.
Well, and I'm sure there's many, but is there one thing that you can draw from having been an alumna of community college, Northeast Mississippi, Union University, private, smaller faith-based school, and a large public flagship like University of Mississippi?
So say again, and one thing I could draw from.
Well, is there one thing that, because you've really been able to attend that broad brush of experiences where you've got your community college, you've got a private faith-based school, and you're obviously leading a private faith-based school, and then a large public flagship institution. Is there one thing that you've been able to really draw from each to say, hey, I'm applying this to Blue Mountain, or maybe I'm not applying this to Blue Mountain?
Well, each experience was definitely quite different. I think one of the things that if I were going to look for a common thread, as I think back on that, I think it's just a matter of hard work. There's hard work to be done in order to be successful in any kind of setting, community college, public, private, 2-year, 4-year, the opportunity to grow and learn if you apply yourself, that's going to be true in each of those places. I learned a lot. It's been very helpful to me in my career to understand, because I've been in it. I've been in the community college, well, in all three settings, really, as a student and a teacher or a professor. And so I've seen the perspectives, and that's been really helpful to me to be able to understand the nuances, to understand the distinctions. I saw the common thread there as it applied to me personally, but I think it's helped me recognize and have maybe a greater appreciation for higher education in general, just to be able to see it from several different perspectives. I say especially.
Where do you see? Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to mention in all three of those settings, let me correct that, more so at the community college and then at Union and here, being a part of the accreditation process and seeing how that works in different places has been really a critical component of my preparation as an administrator. And I would encourage anyone who's going into higher ed. Some people want to run from it, say, "Oh no, it's accreditation time again." I really would say get involved and learn everything you can about those processes because they're going to be critical to how you can comprehend all of the ways in which your institution works.
So where do you see Blue Mountain Christian in 10 years?
In 10 years, I would say that it is very important that our commitment to our mission is as vibrant and we are as enthusiastic about it in 10 years as we are right now, if not even more so. I would hope that in 10 years we will see that our investment in healthcare education will have expanded considerably. We are studying now what those next steps might be. We launched a School of Nursing in January of this year, feeling very strongly that it's a part of our mission that we have recognized that we needed to fill for a very, very, very long time. And so seeing where that takes us, there's a critical shortage, as everyone knows, there's a critical shortage of nurses. Our mission also has, our history, I should say, has also reflects a strong commitment to teacher education and to ministerial education. And so teaching and preaching and healing have been sort of watchwords after the ministries of Christ that we have found ourselves pursuing and are excited about what those three areas, as well as many others, of the opportunities that they afford us. But I see us in 10 years having done our part or continuing to do our part to address some critical shortages in all three of those areas, as well as growing our academic programs in ways that will support the immediate community. We were talking about community earlier, but the larger community of North Mississippi and the Mid-South as those needs continue to be critical for us.
Well, excellent. Well, Dr. Barbara McMillan of Blue Mountain Christian, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Well, I enjoyed it. Thank you so very much for having me.
Absolutely.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the College Admission TV Presidential Podcast. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll bring you another insightful conversation with a distinguished leader in higher education.